Hi there, this is Tracy M., and welcome to week 7 of Communications Campaigns. We have been reading about You Are What You Publish and how marketing and PR drive sales. So, chapters 10 and 11 were our readings from last week, and now we're really moving into action planning. And just want to recap the API model, which we've been talking about. As you come up with your campaign, you're going to be giving some background information on the situation. You will have done a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the situation. You will have developed your ideal client, avatar, buyer persona, whatever you want to call it. Really think about the goals and objectives that you have for your campaign, coming up with the tactics that you think make the most sense for you to use in terms of your campaign, as well as your messaging. You need to think about budget too. Are you going to need any money basically to produce videos or redesign a website or anything of that nature? And then you're going to implement, you're going to have an action plan to actually lay out what you're going to do with each of the tactics and who's going to do it and when. And then the next step in the process, you're going to monitor and tweak your campaign as you're going along. And then, of course, you'll come up with a way to evaluate based on your goals and objectives. So that's sort of the framework that we're asking you to put together in your campaign. Let's talk a little bit about chapters 10 and 11 and how this really applies to campaign development. So chapter 10 really starts off by saying, focus on your audience. Don't focus on the product or service that you're trying to sell. And a good example is Starbucks. So Starbucks doesn't lead with coffee or anything like that. It really is about selling a place to hang out for a while. It kind of represents a splurge. And so a lot of their marketing and their buyer personas are targeted to the experience that you're looking to have when you go to a Starbucks. So when you think about organizational goals, you really need to get in sync with, for your campaign, what the organizational goals are. So is your organization trying to get people to subscribe to something, donate, buy, join, vote, like whatever that action is, knowing what those organizational goals are. And typically in the corporate setting, it is revenue, more customers, selling more product to more customers. So your marketing and communications campaign is going to tie back to that. How are you going to move the needle on those organizational goals with your campaign? How are you going to, so it's not about press clips and it's not about web stats. It's more about how you're driving impact to those bottom line outcomes that the organization has at more of the strategic level. And so you always want to make sure your campaign is tied back into that in some way. And as you develop your buyer personas, it's really important that you're niching down or you're micro-targeting who it is that you're trying to communicate with. And the more specific you can get about what problem you're solving for them, the more impactful that will be. So, for example, they gave the example of children's tricycles and how they're typically bought by parents or grandparents. And so that's how the marketing is written, the copy is written, and the campaigns are developed around that targeted. And some ways that you can get really detailed about the buyer personas, if you've got a pretty general idea, you can actually interview them and do focus groups. So things that you can think about, and there is a template in the book, but what are the goals and aspirations of your persona? What are their problems? What media are they regularly going to get answers to their questions? So are they going to Facebook? Are they going to Google? Where are they going to get answers? And then how can you reach them? And think about what words and phrases they're searching. That is really going to be important as you develop your messaging, and because you're going to want to make sure that you're using those words, that you're using imagery and multimedia that plays into those types of words or phrases that they're looking at. If you can figure out what publications or websites they're going to, what are their daily activities, and then how is your organization going to solve that problem for them? You can even name your persona. I know I've done this before in developing different campaigns, and you actually name the person and you kind of visualize what they look like and where they shop and what they do. And then what you're going to do is your campaign, and including your website, is going to be organized around those personas so that when they get to your website, they'll say, yes, that's me. So one example would be a few chapters ago, we talked about a university. And so if it's, say, a alumni 10 years out, they can see exactly where they need to go to navigate to get the information they're looking for, and you're driving them to make that donation to your organization. One of the case studies in the book was about Beko, B-E-K-O. They are a brand that makes refrigerators, washers, dryers, those types of things. And when they went into China, they realized that their design needed to change based on just a lot of things around the Chinese culture. And so they actually won an innovation award for, they had understood that there was this difference in the way they needed to design the refrigerator. And they really interviewed people and listened to people, and their sales just took off. So that's a good example of when you really niche down and you really can provide a solution that is maybe different for that type of buyer. The author talks about some work that he did with shareholder.com, and he did some keyword context in their website. And when they went into the Canadian market, they used different words, and so they made sure the website had sort of a combination of both. And then when they launched their product, it was really, really successful in the marketplace because they had done that persona information gathering, research to make sure they were really hitting the mark. So you really need to think about what do you want your buyers to believe. So a good example was in political campaigns, like when Obama ran on his platform of change in 2008. And if you think about things like Volvo, they stand for safety. And so while it's a luxury car, they're really trying to connote that they're all about safety. And so when you're developing your messaging, you've got to think like a publisher, and you've got to really make sure that the words that you're writing are really going to strike a chord with your, ideal client, avatar, persona, whatever it is. And also think about what other media could you maybe publish that they would find helpful. Maybe it's an ebook, maybe it's a white paper, maybe it's a blog post or a podcast interview, or even a YouTube video, or something that you put out on Twitter. One of the other examples they gave, sometimes you'll have multiple personas. Right now, Technologies, they had 4 different types of personas, but they did have metrics that once they went through this process, they were able to show that they were converting in each of those 4 personas to the action that they wanted to have taken. So one of the things that is available for download, and it's a great template, a marketing and PR strategy planning template that will help you answer all of these questions. I think that would be really helpful if you look at that and you use that as you plan your campaign. So moving on to chapter 11. Chapter 11 was really, it's a new chapter in this edition, and it's really tying together marketing and sales, and taking some of the things that are happening in the marketing world and linking them up to best practices in sales. So this is a new chapter in this edition, but you can use marketing and PR to drive sales. And I think the point is that today the salesperson doesn't really control the whole relationship between buyer and seller. What's happening is the buyer can go out and search the internet for whatever kind of information they're looking for, and so the content is going to be really important, that you can influence the sales process. And the difference between sales and marketing, the way he describes it, is marketing is one to many, so you're putting content out there to many people, and sales is really driving the deal home one to one, really making sure that the buyer takes that final action in the buying process. A good example that he used in the book was BuildDirect. So he was looking for to put some bamboo floors in, and so he went to this website, and it was a really great content-rich website. He got some great response. He was able to get some samples, and now he's really strongly considering purchasing. So it moved him through the process really, really quickly. The other thing to think about in your campaign is, how are you going to use your CEO? Your CEO could become your best spokesperson, your best marketer, your best salesperson. And so as part of your campaign, is there a role for them? What is the right role? What is the right form or the right tactic to get them involved? And you want to make sure their messaging is really at a higher level and not down in the weeds. So that's just another thing to think about as you're planning your campaign. A couple other points that the book brings up is, are you requiring people to register for something before they download it? And so he did a little research, and if you don't require people to put in their email address, sometimes they're more likely to download your content. And the other thing to think about is after you've got the deal closed and you've had the action taken, how are you going to keep in touch with your client or your customer? Are you going to create some kind of like private Facebook group for them? Or are you going to really keep that dialogue going? When people go to the web, they're not really looking for advertising. They're looking for information. And so your site navigation needs to make sense as part of your campaign in terms of how you organize it so that the persona can really figure out where they are. So you don't want to organize your website based on how you're organized organizationally, internally, or things like that, because it's not going to even really make sense to your external audience. But really understand what the sales process is, and then make sure that you're supporting it through all of your marketing and communications tactics. So just a few best practices to think about, and you might want to put this in your campaign, is what kind of photos or images are you going to use that are going to be appealing to your persona, your ideal client, that's going to really appeal to them and tell your story. Make sure you have feedback loops in there. So how are they going to be able to get in contact with you? How are you going to be responsive back to them? Provide ways for them to interact. Like I said, private Facebook groups, whatever it is. You always want to make sure your content is current and accurate. And you want to make sure that you have social media share buttons so that people can share your content off. Make it easy for them to, once you've created this content, that they can pass it along. And then you're really trying to drive that buyer into the sales process or in the cycle. So just know how long your sales cycle is. Know how you're going to try and make it easy for people to do business with you or find your content. So that sort of wraps up chapters 10 and 11. Your homework for this week is going to be to read chapters 12 and 13. Continue to work on your project, continue to add and build out all of those elements, and participate in the discussion board. And so we're about halfway through the semester, and continue to give me feedback on information that you'd like to see included in the course. I will continue to upload information out to the Joule system as I find templates from different vendors, things that will make it easier for you to pull your campaign together, things that I've used in the past as I've put campaigns together. So I look forward to another productive week, and make sure that you are active in the forums. Make sure that you are keeping up with the readings. If there's anything that I can do to assist you this week, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you. So again, good luck this week, and I hope that you are building on your existing knowledge and that you're starting to feel comfortable with this framework for how you can create campaigns so that it's a repeatable process and it's a logical sequence of how you're going to put these campaigns together in the future. So thanks, and have a great week.